the time in the room to come and taste our wines. But I probably also speak for all of us that we probably wouldn't mind a bit of your heat/humidity at the moment. Julian and I were up there for Vin Expo, and we had some pretty lovely weather and some pretty lovely food. I think Julian drank a lot more good wine than I did by the looks and sounds of him most mornings of Vin Expo. I'm coming to you from Voyager Estate, and we are just a few kilometres south of the Margaret River township. So obviously Margaret River stretches from Cape to Cape on the southwest corner of Western Australia, 100 odd kilometres, about 5 kilometres inland, and we find ourselves on the ridge, which is a high gravel, ironstone gravel, loamy soil over a clay subsoil, which is really the world famous Margaret River soil for both Chardonnay and Cabernet. Voyager Estate, our vines were the original plantings were in 1978. The Wright family purchased the vineyard off the Girardi family in the 90s and continued to grow the vineyard. And today we've got about 100 hectares under vine, of which obviously all our fruit is grown on the estate here. As of this year, we've got a fully certified organic vineyard, which is very exciting and has been something of a work in progress for a few years now. It's not an easy process to transfer a vineyard. It's certainly a high quality vineyard in Margaret River over to organic certification, but that process is complete. We're also a winery that prides itself on our sustainability. We're one of the original members of Sustainable Wine Growing Australia. And we're a silver member, recently announced silver member of the International Wineries for Climate Action. So we join some really visionary wineries in the world like Spotswood, Jackson Family Wines, Cullen Wines here locally, Torres, amongst a few others. A really high caliber group of wineries coming together, committing to net zero by 2050 and actually opening our carbon books to the world to say, have a look as we do that. So we are in a slightly more southerly position, along with Tim at Leeuwin, who'll speak in a sec. Neighbours, outstanding cooler sites for Chardonnay, maritime influence, a really lovely cooling breeze in the afternoons in summer here, that allows us to have excellent acid retention, obviously, in Chardonnay, and retain lovely citrus flavours in the sort of warm, dry summers that we have. So we have a lovely balance of freshness and flavour in Margaret River Chardonnay. And potentially what sets us apart as a region in the world is maintaining lovely acidities whilst getting some really robust, ripe flavours in Chardonnay. I guess you guys are looking right now, I can't see you, but at the 2020 Voyager Estate Chardonnay. I don't like to get too technical and geeky on clones, but I guess it is worth noting we've probably got a higher proportion of Dijon clone in that wine, as much as there's plenty of gingin. It's coming from 4 blocks basically on the property, 2 which are planted to the famous gingin clone, which influences so much of Margaret River's history with Chardonnay, but also some Dijon clone 95 and 76. And we find that on this site, they bring a lovely minerality, a lovely savouriness, and a lovely acid line, not the heft and not the power of gingin and not the tannin, but a lovely transparency and just basically a freshness and savouriness. So maybe a slight point of difference, as well as being a cooler site in the region. And you know, we talk a lot about elegance, a lot about restraint, but frankly also about age-worthiness. And what I'm seeing in our bottlings of those Dijon clones is, you know, 15 plus years, they actually look really exciting as wines and develop amazing secondary characters. I'm thinking, have I said enough about that Chardonnay? Look, it's got 50% new oak, so it's a wine that can actually take a lot of oak. And what we find is in this region with that power, it actually needs that to build some phenolic, some nice fresh phenolic. 2020 was a vintage which had a perfect ripening season, a really good lead up into ripening. Not the greatest crops, not a huge cropping year, and it was quite an early start. It did get quite warm in January and through February. So we started picking on the 4th of Feb, which is about nearly 3 weeks earlier than we started picking this year. And I think that influences the wine. I'm just going to I've got it here, so I'm going to have a taste. I think you see a ripeness here and maybe a touch less minerality than we normally see. Sorry, I hope I'm not the only person drinking. I hope you've all got a glass of this.
Oh, I was going to ask, where was our bottle, Tim?
I thought I'd just kick back after this. I'll just kick back for the rest of the evening. That would be actually a good outcome. But yeah, I'm seeing a really a really lovely nougat flavour from the oak. Vanilla line throughout. That I don't know if you guys get Pickford's lime cordial in Singapore, but a really intense lime flavour, which is fantastic, but not a searing acidity either. The acidity really softened out by quite a lot of malolactic fermentation. That wine would be about halfway through Malo as a blend. Mostly the Dijon elements would be through full Malo. And obviously we'd be getting the full stirring treatment each month, and coming out of barrel in probably November. And that's pretty standard for the house, and bottling in January of the following year. I guess do I have to speak to the Cabernet, Rob? Or are we going to?
Yeah, mate, let's do it now because the Cabernets are pre-poured, so the guys can have a sniff as you explain the Cabernet as well.
Okay, I've poured myself a prodigious amount of Chardonnay without a spit bucket, so I'm going to actually have to scull it. Sorry.
Dry bucket tasting, Tim.
So I might start talking about the Cabernet, and hopefully I can finish drinking the Chardonnay by the time I am done with talking. So that you will have the 2018 Voyager Estate Cab Sav. Yep. So once again, a certified organic wine, both vineyard and winery. It has got about 6% Merlot in it, which will probably surprise no one. The benefits of Merlot in a Voyager blend are well known. It just ripening that touch earlier and being a southerly site, we see lovely richness of fruit. It does bring some mid-palate to our Cabernet. 2018, I must admit, was before my time in Margaret River, so the other guys will probably speak to 2018. But I'm told it was very much the Goldilocks vintage, not too hot, not too cold, not too wet, not too dry, and everything just dialed up beautifully for a really long, even Cabernet ripening period. And I think that's what it's all about. It's getting through the volatility and the heat of summer, and just sort of settling back into a really gentle, clear autumn, cold nights, warm days, not too hot, and hopefully not too much rain, and you can really hang the Cabernet to gain a lot of complexity, but also build lovely tannin profile without becoming overly ripe or obviously overly alcoholic. So Voyager would probably hang its hat on a fairly elegant style, a fairly supple style of Cabernet. We definitely prioritise open canopies early in our Cabernet. You know, we're mindful of being a southerly part of the region, and whether the end of the season could close in on us a bit. You know, around Easter, the rain tends to come, and it certainly did this year. So we're delateralling, so we're taking laterals and really manipulating the canopy very in a very detailed way well before Christmas, and trying to get sunlight into the Cabernet bunches early, so that they obviously not only lose that herbaceousness, but they also get lovely, what would you call it, immunity, I guess, from the warmer sun that we might get in January and February, so they can sort of fly through that and sail into autumn, hopefully. So I think, yeah, everybody. Oh yeah, go for it, Rob.
Can I jump in there, mate? I'm mindful of the time we need to allocate.
Oh, apologies.
Yeah, I feel like that person at the Oscars. We're supposed to start playing music when people thank their agents for too much. But if you won't mind sticking online though, because
yes, I will.
There's some questions and stuff later on. So
yeah, no, thank you for stopping me. No problem.
No problem. So over to Feleesha at Evans and Tate. Feleesha.
Hi, so yeah, I'm Feleesha. I'm one of the Evans and Tate winemakers here in Margaret River, and tonight you're going to be able to try our 18 Redbrook Reserve Chardonnay and our 17 Redbrook Reserve Cabernet. Just a little bit on the history of Evans and Tate. So John Evans and John Tate first planted in 1971 in the Swan Valley. And then they purchased some land in Leeuwin in Margaret River in 1974. And that is when they then started planting there. And this was right when the Margaret River region was just developing. And that is where our cellar door now is. And it's our Redbrook vineyard. I guess the winemaking ethos of Evans and Tate is really like hands off. We're just really trying to let the fruit and the vintage really pay homage to Margaret River, the region and the climate and the soil that we have here. I mean, I definitely see myself like as a winemaker, as a nurturer of that. So we're just nurturing the fruit all the way along the process. to really just let the vintage and the fruit speak for itself. So I guess in your glass you've got the 2018 Chardonnay. So yeah, I was here in 2018, so it was, as Tim said, like the Goldilocks vintage. Long, dry, warm summer. We had a couple of like early rain events in the beginning of the growing season that really set us up well going into that Indian summer. We also saw cool nights during that season, which really allowed concentrations of flavour and retention of that natural acidity. I really think you can see the hallmarks of that in our Chardonnay. It's got really beautiful, ripe stone fruit notes on the nose. It's got a really fine-boned, elegant structure to it. And it's got a lovely driving acid that just sucks everything in and holds it right across the palate. And then if we jump to our 2017 Cabernet, so 2017 vintage was a lot cooler and wetter on average in Margaret River. The mild conditions really allowed the wine to speak to terroir and its site where it came from. And that longer ripening period really allowed Cabernets to fully develop like tannin and flavour ripeness with that longer hang time. And again, when you look at that wine, I think that speaks to that vintage again. It's perfumed and it leans more towards red currants and cherry notes, but it's got really beautiful velvety tannins, like from start to finish, all the way across the palate. So, yeah, two wines that look really great, and I hope you guys enjoy them.
Loving it. Thank you so much, Feleesha. On to Julian, please, from Deepwoods.
How you going, everybody? Apologies, I have to get quite close to my laptop because it's about 1 million years old to get a close-up of my delicious features.
Yeah, we should.
Otherwise, you won't hear me at all. Is that okay?
Great. Yeah, perfect.
Good. So my name's Julian Langworthy. I'm the head winemaker at Deepwoods Estate in the Yallingup Hills. I guess we're the most northern winery represented tonight, one of the more northern wineries in Margaret River. Yallingup Hills is widely recognised. Tim's just disappeared, which is unfortunate. This is for him. Yallingup Hills is widely recognised as the best place to grow grapes in the entire world. Not just the best place in Margaret River, which is why the wines are so fundamentally delicious, really. So that said, the Chardonnay that you've got, the 2021 Reserve Chardonnay, comes largely from Leeuwin and Wallcliffe. It's an amalgam of 3 vineyards generally, and it's a wine that's really heavily about a really true house style. I think you guys got it in the glass, so you'll see that real minerality, quite struck match, funk and oak, but a real tension and poise through the palate. The wines are almost chewy on the back palate, which is how we really want to frame them and show them. 21 vintage was moderately temperature, but quite wet, and we made some relatively forced picking decisions due to some quite large rain events. And we've got really high natural acids in the 21 Chardonnays, and you can see that in the sort of singing, quite citrus nature of the palate. So it's quite a special wine, the 21. Deepwood Chardonnay, got James Suckling's #1 Australian wine, well, #1 Australian wine and number 25 in the world this year, which was cool. Won the National Wine Show last week for best white wine, and some other stuff like that, you know. So it's all been long sold out. So you guys getting to try it in Singapore tonight, and Robert having some for you all to try is a bit of a treat. So that's pretty cool as well. And it was a good excuse for me to open some tonight.
Well, happily, Lou's bought some. So we got a little bit of it here. So the people who are here tonight will be able to buy it. We have everything available tonight.
No, well done. You're a magnanimous and very good-looking individual, Robert. It's true. The second wine you've got tonight probably speaks more about our Deepwood site in the Ellingup Hills. Where we're situated is a similar sort of distance as Voyager from the coast, about 5 k's from the Indian Ocean, and about 8 kilometres from the Geograph Bay. It's a very moderated site due to that, the dual of bay and ocean influence, and that very classic Margaret of soil type of Deepwood estate. We're a more sandy gravel over loam, over clay, sorry, and you get wines with great depth of structure. Have a think about the sort of the blue and black fruits running through that reserve Cabernet you've got tonight, and hopefully a liquefying sort of cocoa nib, superfine tannin, which is sort of ably lifted up and supported through a little bit of sort of quiet, taut, cedar-like oak. It's a baby at this juncture. 2019 was quite a cool vintage, and it's possibly not as expressive as some, but it'll be a lovely sleeper of a wine. It'll age for a really long period, and it should hopefully look beautiful and unwind throughout your evening tonight. So I had a look at all the wines on offer tonight and the menu. So it looks like you guys are in for a pretty huge treat, and it's been lovely to be part of it. And anything else? I can keep talking if you want me to, Robert.
Maybe shave your beard.
Well, I could.
I've got a seating crisis I'm going to fix. So I'm going to, if you wouldn't mind running with it. So, mate, sorry, I lost track. Have you dealt with the Chardonnay and the Cabernet?
I certainly have, mate.
Okay, so we're on to Alex now from Mosswood. Just a second.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Jules. The arm that you could see in the background was my dad looking over my shoulder. So thanks, Dad. No pressure there. My name's Alex Coultas. I'm senior winemaker at Mosswood. Mosswood, as many of you may know, planted in 1969, right in the heart of the Winemakers Valley. We're about a stone's throw. Well, let's go with an English cricketer's stone's throw north of where Feleesha is, so not very far. It's we're about 30 metres across the road, just on the northern side of the Redbrook. So Mosswood, planted in 69 by Bill and Sandra Pannell, purchased by the Mugford family in the mid-80s, and has been managed and owned by them ever since. So very small scale, total of 23 hectares of vines between both the Mosswood property and the Vale property. You've got luckily a wine from each of those vineyards tonight. We very much maintain a somewhat artisanal approach, I suppose. Everything's still hand-picked, hand-pruned. Tim from Voyager alluded to the use of fruit exposure. It's a big theme of the Mosswood vineyard, and as a result, ripeness across the board with all of Mosswood wines is a definite theme, all the way through from Semillon and Chardonnay into Cabernet as well. So that's, I guess, covered a fair bit of the history of Mosswood. The wines you've got in front of you tonight, the 2022 Vale Chardonnay is the first one. That's quite a new wine for us. First vintage was only 2021, so it's the second release. So we're still, I guess, developing a bit of a feel for that particular vineyard. It's a little bit cooler site when you compare it with Mosswood. It's only a couple of k's down the road, but it is a bit more sheltered and a bit more lower lying. So definitely quite lively acidity, I think, is the theme of that. Lots of fresh lime, beautiful ripe stone fruit, which we do get off the Mosswood property as well. And some of that sort of nutty, nougat-y character in the background as well. But yeah, as I said, it's a wine where we're still gaining a feel for. We upped the ante with the oak regime in 2022. 2022 was quite a warm vintage for us. Beautiful ripeness, so fruit concentration was quite high. So we went up to 50% with that wine. Full malolactic fermentation, as with Mosswood Chardonnay. 9 months on oak, aged on lees, so you get that sort of nice bready pastry character in the background. Complements that fruit. The Mosswood Cabernet, the 2020 vintage, is your second glass from us tonight. So 2020 was a bit of a stunner in terms of ripening. Unfortunately, crops were very well down, as Tim alluded to before. With Chardonnay, Cabernet was not dissimilar. We had a hailstorm at the property that caused us a bit of grief towards the end of October. So that knocked the Cabernet and the Cabernet Franc down a bit. I think we're about 40% down across all blocks, so pretty significant. Petit Verdot makes up about 7% of that blend, so that's an interesting one for us. We normally, Petit Verdot for us fluctuates up and down like a yo-yo. So 7% for us is quite high in that blend. It gives it that really nice violet lift and some black tubes in the background, as well as that acidity and tannin that it's very well known for. So I think stylistically, it's probably a different wine for us. Keith likens it back to 1981, being a really concentrated vintage, low crops. Obviously, I wasn't even born in 1981, but I have tried it. Can see some similarities. Tim's putting his hand up. But yeah, we have to go back that far to see a similar sort of vintage in terms of growing season and crops and that sort of thing. So as Julian was talking about with this 2019, I think we feel the same with the 2020s. It's a sleeper. It'll take a long time to develop, as the 81 did apparently. So one to stick in the cellar, and probably won't really show any signs of bottle bouquet for 10 to 15 years. So please enjoy the night and have some fun and enjoy the wines, guys. Thank you.
Thanks. So finishing up with Tim. Tim, if you could walk us through your two wines, that would be great.
Perfect. Firstly, just it's an honor and it's really humbling to be able to present two wines tonight in regards to Art Series Chardonnay and Art Series Cabernet on two different vintages, and to be in the esteemed company of Julian and Tim and Alex and Feleesha. It's like, this is like Mecca over here. So, you know, we're all about a team in Margaret River. And, you know, I get very emotive on these type of tastings when we're all together talking about our wines and talking about our philosophies and objectives and where we see where we've been and where we go to. So yeah, that's my emotional content absorbed. But in terms of Art Series Chardonnay, what you're looking at tonight, wow. It really comes down to plantings of the original plantings of Gin clone in Margaret River, Chardonnay in Margaret River, and with that, the beauty about Gin is it's ameliorandage, or it's hen and chicken. It's power and concentration. It's this beautiful swing between minerality and focus and finesse and lace acidity, but then you've got power and concentration, and that's not just within Art Series Chardonnay, that's within a region overall. And I think that's what makes, for me, Art Series so special. But it's through the Cates from 100 kilometers north to south on the southwest tip, from Cape Naturalist down to Cape Leeuwin. But it's a thread. We exist in this beautiful environment that has been touched on tonight, where I'm sitting. It's 7 kilometers from the Indian Ocean and 35 kilometers from the Southern Ocean, and it's luxury to be growing fruit and to have vineyards with such esteemed heritage overall. And I think that is the biggest thing for us overall. And it's about preservation. Like, great wines are grown and not made. Like, my role as the senior winemaker at at Leeuwin is about preserving and protecting. It's about translation of sight, being able to bring that to the winery and just articulating everything that what we see. Fruit spectrum for Chardonnay is about pear. Pear is it. Pear, cut lime, white nectarine. That is the fruit spectrum. And then the subtle nuances are oak solids. So Arturi's Chardonnay it's 100% barrel fermented and matured for 11 months. And to see that wine in the glass tonight, not that I'm looking at it at the moment, I'm not paid enough to buy a bottle, but it's all about the fruit and the nurture and the nature and the articulation of how we select oak and what we see. So there's some of the oldest vineyards of Chardonnay, debatably the oldest, in Margaret River with Chardonnay. And gin, as it was brought in to Western Australia in 1957, and then it came down and the original plantings were on the estate at Leeuwin, and we're amongst one of 5 founding wineries and families of Margaret River. It's a super special wine overall. It's like, for me, just kind of taking away from that, like, for me, this wine is about energy, it's vitality, it's complexity, it's length. I could probably talk about this wine for about 3 weeks, but yeah, it's such a incredible site. And Tim was talking about soils before, so where we sit as a whole region, we're pre-Cambrian, so the granitic bedrock is 750 million years old, and then in the tertiary that bedrock kind of washed away, and that left us with this beautiful kind of pebble or lateritic gravel overall, laquette, I think the French call it. And that's what gives free draining soil. So it gives vines this beautiful ability to not overcrop. And it's this beautiful nature that you got ocean, you got free draining soils, and you got this beautiful heat summation that doesn't kind of peak and trough overall. And then you get to Chardonnay and you go, wow, there's so much energy, there's like so much lace acidity, and there's so much punch. And it's like, okay, when do we pick it? When do we pick it? It's like, wait for the spectrum, cut lime, pear, nectarine, that's the window, and that's what we look for. And then we hand harvest, and a mixture of skin contact, which will be, basically amplifying texture within the fruit overall. And then we'll do some whole bunch pressing to gain some solids as well. So you've got this kind of beautiful yin and yang, you've got this kind of salt and pepper aspect. And I think that's what you see with the vintage in front of you. And I think if you were to look at this wine and go, wow, is that 100% new oak? And you go, no, all I see is fruit. And it's like, that's the objective, because that is what the mission and the vision is. And it's about translation of sight to glass. It's like, so many things can be overdone, but if you were to take a really kind of clean, maybe I just think about it too simply, but when I walk through the vineyard with David Winstanley, our viticulturalist, and we're going, bang, it's now. I want to see that in the glass. And it can't be more truer to this wine. And it's a really special wine. And sorry if I get a little bit emotional on it, but
There's a fair bit of emotion here too, so it's okay.
yeah. I have got so much emotion with Chardonnay in general, and so much Chardonnay within the region with other producers. This is just our philosophy, and this is what we do, whether it's age, whether it's clone, and it's what we believe in. And I think it's all about belief and creation, but it's also about pedigree and the foundation, about what you set out to achieve. And yeah, it's a pretty spectacular vintage, this one. So I think I've probably overdone my time on Chardonnay. So
Yeah, so if we can move on to the cab and wrap it up there, there's a couple of questions for the group.
Yeah, definitely. So for block 20, which is planted in 1975 for Artillery Chardonnay, there is block 8, which was planted in also 1975, but it's dry grown. Cabernet. Oh my God, how much do I love Cabernet? Do you know what I love about Cabernet is this kind of beautiful, kind of lush sweetness, dark concentrated blackcurrant, dark cherry fruits. But then on the other way, you've got these beautiful aromatic, or aromats, I call it. You've got this kind of bay leaf and dried sage and elevation and like lavender, violet, and it's so intense in terms of you don't even need to taste it, you just smell it, and it's just like, bring me in, like grab me, because half of what, well, more than half of what you smell is what you're going to taste, and Cabernet has that capacity overall. So Artillery's Cabernet is average by
OK， 我要听他们讲话。等为什么我需要什么吗？
I think
Someone
Linda's
stop muted.
online.
Yeah, I think that's the NSA plugging in.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
Tim, I wonder if I couldn't interject here, and just one of the questions from someone who didn't get in tonight to the dinner was, what is your, and they wanted me to direct this to you, what is your opinion of climate change in the future of Cabernet in Margaret River?
Well, do you know, it's a really good question, and it's a really common question as well. I think if you were to look geographically where we sit, we're in the southwest corner of not just Western Australia, but Australia as a whole. And if you look at our ocean mass that surrounds us, so literally, apart from the outlet behind me, I'm basically 6.5, 7 kilometers from the Indian Ocean, and then 30 to 35 kilometers from the Southern Ocean. I think that body mass of the two oceans, and then beyond that, we've obviously got another body of water which is still part of the Indian Ocean. We're not seeing, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but the impact of global warming is minimal at the moment for us.
That's really good news.
Well, the thing is, like, we go from 19 cool vintage, 17 cool vintage, 9, 6, but then we have kind of moderate. We don't have the parabola of warm to hot, which is what might happen on the eastern seaboard. But yeah, that's open for commentary.
We've got sorry to interrupt. We've got a weather station is gonna almost align with Tim's feeling. We've got a weather station at the property with about 20, I think 7 years worth of data at the moment. This is at Mosswood specifically. And if anything, we are getting cooler over that 27-year period. It is very, very slow, just as Tim alluded to. So the effects are, if any, are moderate, and they're actually in the opposite direction. So I can only speak for us specifically. It's different elsewhere. But yeah, I guess that's in line with the way that Tim is. So.
Any other questions from anywhere else in the room before we? Sorry, what's that? Eh? What keeps you guys awake at night? Geez, that's esoteric. I love it. Cricket.
My baby.
Zoom calls.
Yeah.
Ashes cricket at the moment.
Ashes cricket.
Well, we shouldn't take up too much of your time. I have one more question to ask you. Yeah, one more. Yeah. So don't have to sell me on the market wines. But in Singapore, I encounter a lot of wine snobs in France, or who just basically say I only drink French. And I say to them, look, let me be clear, Margaret River Chardonnay Cabernet is the best in the world, bar none. I'd like a comment from the winemakers. I like Julian's response.
I'll roll into that because that statement is very close to my heart. But I think all of the winemakers here today, and I don't want to speak for you guys, but we are very blessed when we make wine, and we feel that in our lifetimes, I feel in my lifetime, that we will make some of the best wines ever to come out anywhere in the world, not just in Australia, but anywhere. And the value that you get is just mind-blowing. You know, the 5 Chardonnays you've tried tonight, if there's a better Chardonnay at pound for pound at price than any of those, I'd be blown away. And we've just got to do a great job of lifting it up and lifting each other up and talking about how amazing the quality is, and the world's going to start listening. So enjoy them while they're accessible at the moment. So hopefully they're Montrachet prices before too long.
Yeah, that was another question from someone else, was what about the prices of Margaret River Chardonnay? We don't need to bring that up. So I have one more question before we let you go, and that is, would you all come and join us again sometime soon when we have the new vintages in Singapore? It'd be great to redo this dinner. It'd be awesome. So thank you all very much for coming. I'm going to get down to the business of sorting out the late table and getting them fed and watered. So thank you all so much, and hope to see you in Singapore soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Enjoy the evening.
Thanks. Good
Thanks,
night.
Rob.
Bye.
Again.
Love you all.
Farewell.
I love you, Jules, more than anyone.
Love you too, Tim.
We need to have a beer.
Yeah, or a glass of Art Series Chardonnay after that. You made me thirsty.
Oh, so you're always salivating.
Yeah, bro.
I'll call you in a minute.
Okay, see you, mate.
Yeah.
please.